Today, I'm going to be taking a first look at this Week 10 NFL DraftKings main slate. Like I always do here with these videos, I'm going to go position by position, talking about each play that's sticking out to me here early on in the week, and then we'll wrap up this video by putting together a first look cash lineup and a first look tournament lineup. With that being said, let's dive into this. And we're going to kick things off here at the quarterback position. Now, this 10-game slate here this week is definitely better than the 10-game slate we had last week, but I don't want to say it's a great slate by any means. I will still be doing a cash lineup and GPP lineup at the end here, but might be another week where I just put a little more emphasis on the tournament side of things. With that being said, let's dive into the quarterbacks here. We do got some decent options at the top with Lamar and Herbert, but honestly, I'm looking at Joe Burrow here right away, $6,800. Ever since the bye, he looks to be back. You can see it back-to-back games here. He's played really well. 5 touchdowns in those games. Almost got to 300 in both as well. 25 and 27 DraftKings points. That's the Joe Burrow we're accustomed to watching. Now, we'll want to keep an eye on Jamar Chase here this week. He did have a back injury in last week's game. Did not practice here on Wednesday. Sounds like he's going to be fine for Sunday, but we probably have to downgrade Burrow overall if Chase does not play. I like Dak Prescott here as well at $6,700. Similar situation since the bye week. He's played very well. 3+ touchdowns in both of those games. 300+ passing yards in both of those games. Topping 30+ DraftKings points. And a good matchup to build on that at home here this week against a division rival in the New York Giants. We then got Jared Goff there, and I'll scroll back up here a little bit, highlight him and Justin Herbert. I think that's going to be a popular game to target in general. Definitely some shootout potential there. It is worth noting here that Kyler Murray is back this week in a matchup at home against the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know if I'll be able to go there coming fresh off the knee injury, but at $5,900, if he floats around that price here over the next couple of weeks, I think we will be talking about him. And then the last quarterback that I wanted to highlight here was Geno Smith. I know he hasn't been great this year, but this seems like a get-right spot for him at home against the Washington Commanders, who just don't have a good defense. Secondary is not very good, and it's easy to stack him up with his top 3 wide receivers, who I'll touch on once we get to the wide receiver position. Now, moving over here to the running backs, so we do have some nice spend-up options here this week. I imagine I will be locking in Christian McCaffrey to my cash lineup. Plenty fun playing him in tournaments as well. $9,200 is a guy who could be priced at $10,000 the way he plays. He basically locked into a touchdown every single game, and we know the volume is going to be there. I also like Tony Pollard here this week. Again, hasn't been great so far this year, but I do like the matchup at home against the New York Giants. More of a tournament play for sure, but at that price of $7,300, he did stick out to me. Same thing here with Travis Etienne. I know it's not a great matchup against the 49ers, but if you look at the volume here in both the running and passing game, it's there week in and week out. That's translating to really solid DraftKings performances. I want to say we can go there in cash for sure in tournaments, maybe one I need to drill into a little bit more as the week progresses, but at that price, again, another guy who stuck out to me. And then another tournament play that I like here this week is going to be Joe Mixon at home against the Houston Texans. It seems like he's going to be due for one of those games where he goes for 25+ DraftKings points. Kind of been floating around that number here over the last 2 weeks. You know, similar situation. Someone who should get 15+ rushing attempts, see around 3 to 5 targets in a game. He just needs to score 2 touchdowns in a game, and he's going to be GPP viable, someone you're going to want in your lineup, especially at that price there of $6,200. Now, scrolling down just a little bit here, Rachaad White, I don't necessarily love the matchup against Tennessee, but again, volume is not an issue for this guy, especially in the passing game. You can see the targets there, which have led to solid DraftKings performances, only $5,800. Again, don't love the matchup against Tennessee, who's notoriously good against the run, but as long as he's involved in the passing game, I think he needs to be on our radar. And then scrolling down here into the low 5K range and upper 4K range, I'm not in love with it. I do like the matchup at home for the Pittsburgh Steelers here against Green Bay, who have not been good against running backs this season. But Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris just haven't had that kind of boom performance so far this year. You know, we could go with Jaylen Warren here, who's more involved in the passing game. You could see he floats around anywhere from 8 to 12 DraftKings points. Same thing with Najee. He has been better as of late. Look, if he gets us 15 DraftKings points at this price of $4,900, you know, we can play that in cash for sure. But probably don't want to touch that in tournaments. Now, folks, before we dive into the wide receiver plays here, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Also want to let you know that I'm running a free Discord channel. If you want to join that, there's a link to do so in the description below. We got a great group of people in there talking a number of different sports, sports betting, and prize picks too. Plus, I give all of my announcements in there, and what I want to give here right now is I will be taking vacation from November 27th to December 3rd. I will not be making content during that week, but I do plan to give updates and picks in my Discord channel. So if you haven't joined that yet, do so today. With that being said, let's dive into these wide receivers here. Again, some solid options right at the top. You got Keenan Allen, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown. The two that are really sticking out to me here are CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown. If we look at the volume here since the bye, 14 and 16 targets for CeeDee, getting him the #1 wide receiver volume that he deserves. Again, a great matchup there at home against the New York Giants, definitely on my radar. Same thing here with Amon-Ra St. Brown. This guy is so consistent. The targets are consistent. The performances are consistent. I'd like him to find the end zone just a little bit more, but at $8,300, definitely a cash and tournament play this week. As far as tournament-only plays go, I kind of like Mike Evans here in this matchup against Tennessee, who do not have the best secondary. Baker's not afraid to air it out here to Mike Evans, and he's one of those guys who can score multiple touchdowns in a single game. Now, I talked about Jamar Chase. He is dealing with a back injury right now. I suspect he's going to be good to go on Sunday, but if he does not play here this week, I think we need to consider T. Higgins, who looked really good the other night. 9 targets in that game, 110 receiving yards, made some really good catches as well. So if Chase is out at $6,500, I really like T. Higgins there. But I talked about Geno Smith earlier too. I like him from a tournament perspective this week. At home here against the Washington Commanders, we can stack him up with a DK Metcalf here, who I believe will have a big game sooner than later. You could mix in a Tyler Lockett as well if you want to save a little money there. And then we'll get down to JSN here once we get into the 4K range. He's sitting at $4,100, and he's getting more involved in this offense week in and week out. But before we get to him, I want to highlight 2 wide receivers here for the Jags. The 49ers do have a great defense, and their defensive line is even better now with Chase Young. But their secondary is the one issue or one area where they do struggle. So I certainly don't mind the wide receivers here this week in Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley. Kirk's been very consistent this year outside of week 1. Definitely consider him in cash here. And then Calvin Ridley, probably more of a tournament play. I do like the 10 targets he received in week 8 before heading to the bye, but he really hadn't seen that since week 1. So I probably can't go there in cash, but I do like the price at $5,400. And then one other guy I want to highlight here before JSN is Deontay Johnson. Finally scored a touchdown last week. It was like 600 and something days since he had last scored. The last guy to throw him a touchdown pass was actually Ben Roethlisberger. So if that says anything, it had been some time since he found the end zone. But again, the targets are there, and at $5,400 against the Packers, I certainly don't mind that. But heading down here to JSN at $4,100, I said he's getting more involved in this offense. You can see the numbers there, translating to solid DraftKings points. If I'm shooting for 3x value in my cash lineup, that's what, 12.3 DraftKings points for him to hit 3x value, and you can see he's been doing that pretty consistently here over the last few weeks. Now, with the tight ends, we don't have Travis Kelce this week. We do, however, have Andrews, Kittle, and Laporta on this slate, but I actually want to highlight Taysom Hill. He is just kind of a utility player in this Saints offense right now. He's throwing the ball, he's running the ball, he's catching the ball, and scoring touchdowns, which obviously matters. You can see there over the last 4 weeks, seemingly just getting better and more involved in that offense. $5,100 is certainly expensive for this position, but I think we need to consider him in tournaments. But as far as cash games go, I'm looking down here in the 3K range. Trey McBride has been solid in this Cardinals offense, and being that Kyler is back here this week, I like him even more. If we're trying to save some money, I think we can do that here with Cade Otton, who was great again last week. You can see there the volume has been there over the last 3 weeks. Scored 2 touchdowns last week. I'm not going to bank on that at $3,400, but we only need about 10 DraftKings points for him to hit 3x value. And then again, if Jamar Chase does not play here this week, or if you just really want to punt at the tight end position, Irv Smith, I certainly don't mind him at $2,700. He did find the end zone last week, and maybe he can build on that now. And then as far as defense defenses go here this week, always some nice options at the top, but let's head down here to the 2K range. Cincinnati is sticking out to me here, playing the Houston Texans and a rookie quarterback. Hey, look, don't get me wrong. I know CJ Stroud has been awesome this year, but he is still a rookie quarterback, bound to make mistakes, and this defense has just been really good here ever since giving up 20 points to the Cardinals. You can see they're 13 against Seattle, 17 against San Francisco, 18 last week against Buffalo. Those are some solid offenses there, so at home here against Houston, I certainly don't mind them. Don't mind the Cards here playing Taylor Heineke and the Atlanta Falcons. It's kind of a punt option there at $2,500. And honestly, I don't even mind the Jags here. I obviously don't love the matchup against the 49ers, but the 49ers do have to travel from California here now to Florida. You lose some time there traveling those time zones, and this defense has actually been pretty solid. You can see the DraftKings numbers there off to the right-hand side. So I think I'd prefer to just get to Cincinnati if at all possible, but I don't mind those other two if I'm looking to punt. All right, now let's put together a first look cash lineup here for Week 10. We're going to start at the quarterback position. Honestly, I'm okay starting this off here with Burrow or Dak. Let's go with Burrow here, assuming that Jamar Chase does play this week, knowing we can pivot to Dak and save $100 if need be. I'm going to put in Christian McCaffrey as well, someone I'm considering in my cash lineup week in and week out. And then I'm going to look to save a little money here with the other running back. Like I said, I don't necessarily love the matchup, especially when it comes to running the ball, but Rachaad White is so involved in the passing game for the Bucs. I don't mind him at that price there, $5,800. As far as wide receivers go, I really would like to get in CeeDee Lamb or Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to go with CeeDee here to kick things off, and then we're going to need to save some money there as well. Let's go to the 5K range here. Really like the volume that Deontay Johnson's been getting, and then we'll go down to JSN here at $4,100. So $3,400 left over per player. We're at the tight end position now. Let's go with Irv Smith and try and save some money there. Plus, you get a little stack with Joe Burrow. And then let's put in a defense here. I'd like to get up to Cincinnati if at all possible. $4,700 left over for a flex. That can't get me to Najee. I don't want two Steelers in my cash lineup anyway. Let's pivot off the Bengals there and go down to the Cards. That's $5,000 for a flex. That could leave us with a Jahan Dotson. Volume has definitely been there over the last 3 weeks, and I don't mind the matchup against Seattle. I think that's more of a tournament play for me, but for the time being, I'll put him in there for a first look cash lineup. All right, now let's put together a first look tournament lineup as well. I actually quite like Geno Smith here this week during my initial look, so I'm going to put him in there with two of his wide receivers in DK Metcalf, and then let's save some money here with JSN as well. And then actually we'll run it back there with a Terry McLaurin, because that Seattle secondary, I know they got some playmakers at the cornerback position. They have just not lived up to expectation this year. And then we'll go to two running backs here that I really like from a tournament perspective this week. That's Tony Pollard and Joe Mixon. So $4,600 left over per player. We'll go to the tight end position here. I'm going to go back to Irv Smith at $2,700 just because that opens up so much money for us. And then I'm actually going to put in the Bengals defense here since I didn't do that in my cash lineup. All right, that's $8,500 left over per player. Look, I could put in a CeeDee Lamb there, but I already have Pollard. I could go with Eckler. I could go Kamara, St. Brown, Barkley. Really some nice options. Or if I wanted to, I could pivot off McLaurin there, go back down to Dotson at $5,000, and that leaves me enough money to get up to Christian McCaffrey. So we have some options there for sure, and as far as a tournament lineup goes, I don't mind that at all. All right, everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Let's have ourselves a great week here, folks, and in the meantime, I'm out of here.